Last weekend, the 4th edition of the Sussex University Chess Congress took place in Brighton, that's on the south coast of England. And as part of the occasion, a special challenge match was organised between Sergey Korshunov, a 20-year-old FM who's the strongest player at the university, and 16-year-old Sohum Lohia, who's already an international master. He's a great prospect. This was a 4-game rapid play match, 20 minutes plus 20 seconds increment. And on paper it was a very even contest. While Sohum has a better classical rating, Sergey has a better rapid play rating. The match was played in aid of the charity Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, and the University of Sussex and the SP Lohia Foundation both contributed to the cause. If you enjoyed this video, then please do click on the link below and contribute to Doctors Without Borders. If you don't know the charity, then do find out more at the website. But essentially, they have teams of medics that work all over the world to save lives in conflict zones, natural disasters and epidemics. It's a really worthwhile cause. Making the ceremonial first move of the match, Professor Rob Galloway, Honorary Clinical Professor at Brighton and Sussex Medical School. In this video, I'm going to look at the first game, which features a very aggressive opening idea in the gioco piano. This is really worth studying. So I'm playing white, started with e4 and e5, and we quickly went into a gioco piano. d3, knight f6, all normal so far. Now the most popular move here is c3. Covering the b4 and d4 squares, perhaps looking to push later on with b4, sometimes going for d4. And usually this knight comes into play via f1 to e3 or g3. I mean, there are lots of different ways of playing this position, but c3 is the most common move, along with castles and then c3. But Sohum went for something different, knight c3. So very classical, all the knights in the middle. And this is quite tricky, introduces some different ideas. So black castled. Now, if one of the ideas of knight c3 is if d6, you can play knight a4 to bag a bishop. That can be very nice. So castles. Now, if you're a regular viewer of this channel, you know that I very much like the strategy for white in this kind of position, with bishop g5, looking to provoke black into playing h6 and g5. Now, the problem with playing it here is that black can drop the bishop back to e7, so there's no problem with the pin. And later on you can play d6 and very often knight h5, bringing the knight into f4, and this is a nice way for black to play. So Sohum plays a very clever move here, a3. Now, it could be that the bishop will be able to hide on a2 if it's attacked later on. But it's a kind of wait and see move. You know, how is black going to commit here? So, for example, if d6, then white can return to this strategy of bishop g5, obviously threatening knight d5. So you can see, you know, having the knight on c3 is very dangerous. And you might provoke h6 and g5, which could be very interesting for white. So black has to be careful here. So Korshunov, Sergey played h6. Well, that is a very provocative move, and Sohum was duly provoked. He played h3. There's no need to castle yet. And after d6, g4, you see h6 is a hook for white. If we can get in g5, that opens up the g file, and with the rook still on its starting position, could move to g1 very easily to get a very quick attack. And in combination with the bishop on c4, this is highly dangerous. So for example, bishop e6, g5, just go for it. And this is a very serious attack. You know, that pin is nasty. Rook g1 coming. Good fun. So Sergey played knight h7. Very sensible. So just stopping g5 for the moment. In fact, it's possible to play g5 straight away. This is very dangerous. And if pawn takes, then rook g1. And if knight takes, again, bishop takes and rook g1. That's not to be underestimated. But Sohum played rook g1. Same idea, just a little bit slower. But then Sergey played knight d4. So looking to exchange off this knight, making g5 more difficult to play. And Sohum played steadily with bishop e3. So bringing the piece out. Of course, it seems reasonable to play like this. But actually, I think it's a missed opportunity. I think if White is going to play with g4, then you've just got to be really brutal and just push forward, even if it just sacrifices a pawn. So if knight takes, queen takes, let's say pawn takes pawn, then you just play this position. And bishop d2, and you look to castle queenside very quickly to bring the second rook into play. That's one of the advantages of playing with knight c3 rather than c3. The queenside pieces come into play very quickly. You get to castle queenside, and yeah, I mean, sometimes just playing like this, queen g2, just looking to recapture here, and yeah, castles queenside, and if that rook gets to the g file with all these major pieces, it's extremely dangerous. But I feel bishop e3 is a bit too slow. c6 played. So that means that black might be able to push forward with d5, maybe b5, b4 to open up a file. Rook g3. So this is a bit too careful. Bishop e6 and black's pieces are coming out. Exchanging off this dangerous bishop on c4. So exchanges in the middle. The knight dropped back. Bishop takes c4, d takes c4. And I think the danger is gone. I think the moment has passed for white. I think it's very instructive, actually, that if you play with g4, you just have to be completely focused on the king side. This strategy only works if the centre remains closed. And you can see after rook e8, there's just too much pressure here. So that had to be defended. Queen d3, and now queen e7, more pressure. This is a problem. So Sohum decided to castle queenside and just cut his losses and allowed black to take on e4. Well, white took on d4. So at the moment, material is even. However, I think black's control on the e-file is really significant. And that bishop looks down at f2. This is better for black, it's quite clear. d5 is a nice move. If pawn takes pawn, then queen takes, looking to come into a2. And then just rook d8. I mean, you can see black's pieces are so well coordinated here. Rook on g3 just looks out of play. Therefore, Sohum exchanged on e4, looking for solace in the endgame. But now that black has a nice kingside pawn majority, this is looking very good fun for black. g6 was played, typical rapid play move, just to cover the f5 square, and gives the king a nice square on g7 as well. I mean, over these next few moves, I think both sides make some inaccuracies. However, I think the general trend of the game is kind of correct. You know, black is better here because, I mean, the bishop is very strong. Nice kingside pawn majority, as already mentioned. But also these pawns are not very well placed. They're weak. And there are weak squares around them as well, where black can look to gain a foothold. Also, you know, these rooks are not very good. Rook b3, I'm afraid, split rooks. I'm going to say it. You can tick the PowerPlayChess bingo card, but it's better if the rooks are simply connected. White is worse here, but after rook b3, it's not great. Rook b8 played, which is absolutely fine, but it's even stronger to play like this. Rook d8. There we go. Look at those beautiful connected rooks. And there's an unprotected rook on d1, c5 threatened, and then rook d7. It's just a more active way of playing the position, defending the pawn from the side, from the middle. And yeah, black's pieces are superb here. It's a really strong position for black. Rook b8, still better for black. Bishop h4, yeah, it's a lovely spot for the bishop. And the knight comes in, there you go. You know, the h pawn is weak, that's f3 is a beautiful square. This is no fun at all for white. Yeah, rook b4, not a pleasant move to make, but the threat was bishop g5, check, the king goes to b1, and then knight d2, forking king and rook. So it's not a lot of fun to play this one. And the bishop bounces back, yeah, defending and attacking at the same time. And e3, good move. So obviously if that's taken, then bishop takes and the king is looking in big trouble. So f4, so it's a huge pass pawn on e3. And what beautiful centralization. In fact, yeah, there's a very strong move here already. Rook c8 was played. In fact, if black exchanges and just played a6, you can see this rook is completely out of play. And that should seal the deal very quickly. Rook c8 was also good. And yeah, white's rook never on a4 never really got into the game. Rook d6 should have been played. That gives white a little bit of a chance. But after this, yeah, the rook just doesn't get back into play, basically. And that's very unfortunate. Just when it seemed like it might enter the game again, rook d5 is a very nasty pin. And f5, if that's taken, then bishop f6 with a deadly pin, therefore king b3. But this was a nice finish. F takes g4 and h5. And this h pawn is just too fast. The game ended like this. It rushed down the board, and basically that costs a piece, at least a piece. Yeah, rook takes knight, and black gets a new queen. Nice victory by Sergey Korshunov. In fact, he went on to win the match 2.5, 1.5. The next 3 games were drawn. They were good fights. So well done to Sergey. And well, but I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of Sohum Lohia in future. He's a very bright prospect. And don't forget, if you like this video and you'd like to contribute to an excellent cause, the charity Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, then do click on the link below.